Charles Kuralt had a knack for reminding America of its human side. The CBS newsman died Friday in New York, but left his road trip tales as a legacy.
Charles Kuralt was one of the most beloved figures in American broadcasting. With his soothing voice, warm smile, and deeply human storytelling, he brought the beauty of everyday life into millions of homes. Through his famous CBS segment On the Road, Kuralt seemed to embody a kind of authenticity that was rare in television. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't scandal-driven. He was the man who preferred gravel roads to Hollywood lights, small towns to big cities, and ordinary people to celebrities. To America, he was the trustworthy, down-to-earth anchor who gave viewers a glimpse of the nation's heart. But behind this carefully constructed public image, Charles Kuralt was hiding a secret. A secret so carefully guarded, so quietly maintained, that not even many of those closest to him knew the full truth. While he was celebrated as a devoted family man, husband, and father, Kuralt was quietly living what can only be described as a double life. On one hand, he was the face of CBS News, a respected journalist, and a man admired for his gentle, folksy storytelling. On the other hand, he had a private world that very few people knew about, a parallel life with another woman, separate from his wife and family, that spanned nearly 3 decades. For years, Kuralt managed to balance these two lives with a skill that shocked even those who thought they knew him best. How did he do it? How did one of the most recognizable men in America, someone constantly in the public eye, manage to maintain this secret for so long without being exposed? That is the mystery that makes Kuralt's story so fascinating and, at times, unsettling. It wasn't until after his death in 1997 that the full truth began to unravel. Legal battles, secret letters, and shocking revelations forced the public to reconcile the Charles Kuralt they thought they knew with the man he really was. His double life wasn't just a passing fling, it was a deeply committed, long-term relationship that revealed a very different side of the man America trusted so deeply. For those who adored him, it was a painful realization that the warm, grandfatherly figure who reminded them of the goodness of small-town America was also capable of deception on a scale that stunned the world. For others, it was a reminder that even the most trusted public figures live complex, often contradictory lives. In many ways, Kuralt's double life reflected the very stories he told. He often highlighted the hidden corners of America, the places and people that others overlooked. Yet in his own personal life, he was hiding something just as deeply tucked away, a love and commitment that existed far from the spotlight, far from the cameras, and far from the family who believed they knew him completely. As the truth came out, questions piled up. Did his wife truly never suspect? How did he manage the logistics of 2 lives while working an intense career that kept him constantly traveling? And perhaps most haunting of all, was the man America adored really just a character, carefully performed while his real self was living in secrecy elsewhere? This chapter of Kuralt's life forces us to re-examine not just him, but the idea of trust itself. Can someone be both the kind, gentle storyteller America loved and the man who lied to his family for decades? Or was Kuralt's double life a reflection of the contradictions within all of us, the difference between who we are in public and who we are in private? What is undeniable is that Charles Kuralt's story is far more complicated than the charming image television created. And as we dig deeper into the details of his secret life, we begin to understand just how carefully and astonishingly he got away with it. Charles Kuralt's ability to live a double life was not an accident. It was a carefully constructed arrangement, born out of both opportunity and his unusual career. As the beloved host of On the Road, Kuralt spent much of his life traveling across America. He was rarely home for long stretches of time, and his family and colleagues had long accepted that his work kept him constantly moving. That constant travel, ironically, became the perfect cover. While many journalists complained about the grind of airports, hotels, and deadlines, Kuralt seemed to thrive in it. His nomadic lifestyle wasn't just part of his job, it became the very thing that allowed him to build another world, away from prying eyes. whenever he was away filming stories about small-town heroes and forgotten places. He wasn't just collecting material for CBS, he was quietly weaving together an alternate existence with another woman, one that lasted for nearly 3 decades. The woman at the center of this hidden life was Patricia Shannon, a schoolteacher and environmental activist from Montana. Their relationship began in the 1960s, at a time when Kuralt was already married and building his reputation in broadcasting. What might have started as companionship slowly evolved into something far more serious. Patricia wasn't a passing fling. She was in many ways his second partner. And through the years, Kuralt provided for her in ways that went far beyond casual generosity. He bought her property in Montana, helped her financially, and spent time with her whenever his schedule allowed. What makes Kuralt's double life so striking is not just that he had a second relationship, it's that he managed to sustain it for decades without the public ever suspecting. His charm, his reputation, and his constant travel all worked in his favor. To the outside world, he was simply Charles Kuralt, the gentle journalist who preferred 2-lane highways to big cities. To Patricia Shannon, he was a man who, while never leaving his first marriage, still gave her years of loyalty, affection, and stability. Kuralt's ability to compartmentalize his life was remarkable. With his wife, he maintained the role of husband and father. With Patricia, he played the role of a devoted partner. In letters to her, he expressed love, devotion, and plans for the future. Plans that, unbeknownst to his legal family, included leaving behind parts of his estate to support her after his death. Perhaps what made Kuralt's deception possible for so long was the very nature of his public image. He was not a celebrity constantly followed by paparazzi. He was not a politician whose personal life was endlessly scrutinized. He was, instead, the everyman journalist, the safe, reliable voice that Americans trusted. Few people would have imagined that behind his warm smile was a complicated secret life, and that trust ironically became his shield. But there was another element to his success at keeping the secret: timing. Kuralt's generation lived in a different era of media scrutiny. There was no social media, no tabloid frenzy over every detail of a celebrity's life. Journalists themselves, especially during the mid-20th century, often protected the personal lives of public figures rather than expose them. This culture of privacy worked in Kuralt's favor, allowing him to move between his two lives without the constant threat of exposure. Still, living a double life is never without cracks. Friends of Patricia Shannon sometimes questioned why Kuralt never divorced his wife. Members of Kuralt's family, though not openly suspicious, noticed his long absences. Yet somehow, he managed to smooth over these cracks, keeping both sides of his life intact. To his wife, he was always busy working. To Patricia, he was building a future in Montana. For decades, the arrangement held. And when Kuralt died suddenly in 1997, many assumed his story ended with the image he left behind: the trusted, beloved journalist who told America's stories. But his death became the very moment his double life was exposed, and it shocked everyone who thought they knew him. When Charles Kuralt passed away on July 4th, 1997, at the age of 62, the public mourned the loss of a man who seemed to embody the spirit of America. His death was sudden, caused by complications from lupus, and tributes poured in. Newspapers praised him as a journalist who gave voice to the forgotten, a storyteller who reminded the nation of its heart. To his family, he was remembered as a husband and father. To CBS, he was a legend who had reshaped television reporting. But just days after his death, a shocking reality began to unfold. Kuralt, who had been so admired for his honesty on screen, left behind a legacy far more complicated than anyone imagined. Legal documents surfaced, personal letters came to light, and suddenly the man who represented American decency was revealed to have lived a secret life for nearly 30 years. The center of the storm was Patricia Shannon, the Montana woman who had been his companion since the late 1960s. In the aftermath of his death, Patricia came forward with proof of their long relationship. She produced handwritten letters from Kuralt, some written just weeks before he died, in which he spoke of his enduring love for her. In one letter, he even instructed her to look after certain properties he had bought for her in Montana, making it clear that his commitment to her was not fleeting but permanent. What stunned the public was not just the existence of the relationship, it was the depth of it. Kuralt had purchased land along the Big Hole River in Montana, creating a retreat where he and Patricia could share their private life. He provided for her financially, gave her gifts, and openly wrote about his affection. The letters showed a man who had carefully built two parallel lives, one in the spotlight as a devoted family man, and another in secret as a partner to Patricia Shannon. Naturally, this led to conflict with his legal family. Kuralt's wife and daughters, blindsided by the revelations, were forced into a legal battle with Patricia over portions of his estate. The heart of the dispute revolved around Kuralt's will and a last-minute handwritten letter that Patricia claimed granted her ownership of the Montana property. While Kuralt had maintained a traditional will for his wife and children, this letter, written in his own hand, complicated everything. In court, Patricia testified about their relationship, presenting evidence that it was not casual but deeply committed. The courts eventually ruled in her favor, recognizing her claim to the Montana land. It was a stunning turn of events, one that left the public and even Kuralt's admirers grappling with a man who seemed suddenly far more complicated than the warm storyteller they adored. For many, the revelation was deeply unsettling. How could a man who had spent his career highlighting the truth of everyday American life live with such deception in his own? Was Charles Kuralt a hypocrite or simply a man torn between duty and love? The public reaction was divided. Some felt betrayed, believing his secret undermined the wholesome image he had cultivated for decades. Others, however, saw his actions as a reflection of human complexity, that even the most admired among us can carry contradictions, weaknesses, and secrets. In a way, Kuralt's double life forced Americans to reconsider not just him, but the very idea of heroes in the public eye. Ultimately, his death revealed a man of profound contradictions. He was both the gentle journalist America adored and a man who deceived his family for decades. His story, once seen as a celebration of American honesty, became a cautionary tale about the hidden lives people can live, even those who seem the most transparent. For Patricia Shannon, the revelations were bittersweet. She had won legal recognition of the life she and Kuralt shared, but at the cost of exposing a secret she had guarded for years. For his wife and children, the discovery was devastating, forcing them to see the man they loved in a completely new and painful light. What was left, after all the letters, court cases, and media frenzy, was a portrait of Charles Kuralt not as a saint or a fraud, but as a deeply flawed man whose legacy was far more complicated than anyone ever knew. Today, more than 2 decades after Charles Kuralt's death, his story continues to fascinate and unsettle. To millions of viewers, he remains the gentle voice who showed America its small towns, unsung heroes, and winding country roads. His work on the Road is still celebrated as a landmark in broadcast journalism, a reminder that stories of everyday people can be just as powerful as those of presidents and celebrities. Yet, alongside that legacy sits the undeniable truth. Kuralt's life was far more complex and conflicted than the persona he shared on television. His double life, once hidden so carefully, is now inseparable from his legacy. For his admirers, this revelation forces a difficult question. Can we still celebrate the beauty of his work, knowing the deception he lived privately? For some, the answer is no. They see in Kuralt's secret a betrayal not only of his family, but also of the public trust. His carefully crafted image of integrity feels tarnished, as though the man who taught America about honesty and decency was not able to live by those same values in his own home. But others take a different view. To them, Kuralt's secret life does not erase his contributions. Rather, it humanizes him. It reveals that even those we place on pedestals carry contradictions and flaws. His double life becomes less a scandal than a reminder that no one, no matter how admired, is perfect. In fact, some argue that Kuralt's greatest strength as a storyteller may have come from this very duality. He understood human complexity because he lived it himself. The legal battles that followed his death eventually settled, with Patricia Shannon securing the Montana property that Kuralt had promised her. But the wounds left behind for his wife, his daughters, and those who loved him never fully healed. To them, the discovery was not a romantic tale of a hidden love, but a painful betrayal that overshadowed their memories. For Patricia, it was validation of a relationship she had lived in the shadows for 3 decades. For the public, it was a revelation that blurred the line between admiration and disappointment. Kuralt's story also raises broader questions about fame, privacy, and morality. Would his secret have remained hidden in today's world of 24-hour news, social media, and relentless celebrity scrutiny? Almost certainly not. In the 1960s and 70s, public figures were afforded privacy that no longer exists. Journalists often looked the other way at personal indiscretions, choosing to protect reputations rather than expose them. In that sense, Kuralt was a man of his time, taking advantage of an era when secrets could be kept far more easily. And yet, his story resonates powerfully today. It reminds us that behind every public figure lies a private self, often unknown to the world. It challenges us to reconsider what it means to admire someone. Do we honor their contributions while acknowledging their flaws, or does deception negate the good they have done? With Kuralt, there is no simple answer. He was both a beloved journalist and a man who deceived his family for decades. What endures, ultimately, is the duality of his life. His voice, warm and reassuring, still echoes in archives of On the Road, where he introduced America to farmers, teachers, veterans, and dreamers. But behind that voice, we now know, was a man living 2 lives, juggling love and loyalty in ways that defy easy judgment. Charles Kuralt's legacy is not one of perfection, but of contradiction. He showed America its best qualities while privately embodying some of its most human flaws, and perhaps that is why his story still matters, not because it diminishes his work, but because it reminds us that even the most admired among us are ultimately human, carrying secrets that may never fully fit the stories we want to believe.